Are you tired of self-doubt holding you back? Have you ever wished you could have the confidence to face your fears, go after your wildest dreams, and the tools necessary to live your best life? Hey there, amazing listeners. I'm your host and author of How to Grasp Confidence and Own Your Power. And I've made it my mission to help you break free from self-doubt and embrace confidence. Subscribe now and join us as we unlock the secrets to unshakable self-assurance. Let's dive in. Hello. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Grasp Confidence Podcast. I am your host, Tara LaFawn Gooch, and this podcast is your personal development, but also your professional development engine. And I can say this with ease because I hire and bring in the best guest speakers every single week to come on this show and teach us the exact strategies they are using to be successful in their personal and professional lives. And this show is no different. So my next guest today is Lester Sidney. And Lester has this amazing sales career. And for a lot of us, sales can be scary. A lot of people in there in businesses, and we're really good at what we do. We're very knowledgeable in that subject, but the sales part is a little intimidating and it can get in our own way sometimes. So I hire and bring in the best people to help us fill in those gaps. And Lester, I would love for you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you are working on lately.
Hey, Tara. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me on the show. Any opportunity I get to share what I've learned over the last 16 years from a sales perspective and helping others and supporting them and through their journey is something that lights me up every single day. So as I mentioned, been in software sales for the last 16 years, currently an enterprise sales manager for a company called Percona. But outside of that, one of the things that I've become extremely passionate about is really mentoring and coaching those individuals who are in sales. And I've gone to another level. And that other level now is sitting on boards for startups and working with founders and CEOs of these companies that are running sales for the first time ever in their life. And there's a lot of challenges that they run into that if they have a seasoned sales professional can easily overcome those. And so one of the things I've been working hard on is working with these different startups. In addition to that, for the last 5 years, I've been a sales mentor for students at Harvard Business School. There's an entrepreneurial and sales course for MBA students. And that's how I found the two boards that I sit on, because these were students that went through the program that were working on amazing things that really spoke true to my heart in areas in which one was around hockey and sports and the other one from a sales perspective. So outside of that, I have a beautiful family. I have an amazing wife that supports me. Outside of my mother, she's my second biggest cheerleader, I would say. And then my adorable 9-year-old son, Jaden, he is such a stud. And it's great to be a father as well, because there's so many things that I've learned in my sales life that I have applied to being a leader within the household, both for my son and my wife, Nicole. So again, thank you so much, Tara, for inviting me on today's show today.
Absolutely. Well, I love the work that you're doing with entrepreneurs and helping them succeed because, again, a lot of people have big visions, big goals, big aspirations, but it's the sales part that's like a mystery for people. For what I do, I notice that with marketing as well, that the marketing aspect can feel like a mystery to people. And ultimately, these things kind of hold us back sometimes, but it doesn't have to be that way, right? We get to lean on experts.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say we need to lean on the experts, and that's why we have people like you, right?
Well, I want to go as far as saying I'm an expert, right? So I do have 16 years, so maybe I'm somewhat of an expert. But one thing I want to share before we jump into more of the questions is oftentimes, even when I'm working with the Harvard Business School MBA students that are going into the sales course, and they always say to me, well, I've never had experience doing any sales. And the first thing I say to them is that everybody, even those listeners listening now, you are a salesperson, whether you believe it or not.
Yeah.
And the simplest example that I could give is that at some point of your life, probably even earlier today, you might have convinced your significant other or someone else on something you wanted to do. Let's say it's a vacation or where to go to eat. That is a form of sales, right? Positioning something of what you want to achieve out of that. Now, you might not get compensated from it from a monetary perspective, but you got what you were seeking. So everyone listening to this, you are a salesperson at the end of the day. And people are either being sold to or doing the selling. So it's one of the first lessons that I teach these MBA students is that you are a salesperson because at some point you've had to convince others to go in a certain direction on a decision to make. So everyone out there, you are a salesperson, whether, again, you believe it or not.
I agree, right? So, you've reached a certain level of, success. You're teaching Harvard MBA folks how to sell. I mean, that's pretty big. You're sitting on boards, you're doing all of these amazing things. But was it always this way? And I know I'm talking to somebody who's a natural born salesperson, because I do believe that some people are naturally born salespeople.
Yeah.
But there was still a time in your life, maybe when there was some friction, maybe there was some uncertainty. Maybe you were questioning your abilities.
So this is actually so timely that you asked me this question. I was fortunate enough, and I'll preface this, the answer to your question with the fact that I had a lot of early success in my sales career. I worked for some amazing sales leaders and organizations. And there was a point where I took a 2-year hiatus from technology sales. And I became a CEO of a cannabis company. And it was a tremendous experience. I raised a seed round of funding, helped grow the company from $1.5 to $4.5 million. And it was an awesome experience. Now, there were some business decisions that led to me stepping down, but also family became very important for me. And I was living in Maine, sometimes 5-10 days in a row. And after I stepped down, I hit a really, really low point. And this is me going to be vulnerable with everyone, where there was 2 months, so it was July and August, where I drank a ton of alcohol. And it was, for me, it was numbing myself because, when I took that role, I was like, I'm never going back to sales. Mm. And so then I was faced with, well, what are you going to do next? Right? Because I am really good at what I do, and it's not to toot my own horn from a sales perspective, but there were some things that I enjoyed running and leading a company. And I'm like, do I really want to go back into sales? And so I hit a deep, dark depression. And one day my wife looked at me because I said to her, I was like, oh man, I'm waking up some days super anxious and feeling depression. Some days, believe it or not, Tara, I was sleeping for like 14, 16 hours. Oh. And it was the summertime and we have a pool and there's so many things. And I didn't feel normal some days unless I had some alcohol. So my wife looked at me and said, I think the best decision for you right now is to stop drinking. So I did that. And I haven't had any alcohol since December 16th of, 2022. So wow. almost 2 years now. At some point, will I go back and have a drink? Yes, but it won't be to the point where I was abusing it to numb myself because I was lost. I was lost. I didn't know what I was going to do next. And this is the turning point in my life where I decided I need to start doing some deep discovery and uncovering who am I? Why am I here on this earth? And what can I do to give back to the world? And so part of this process was going through a number of different executive leadership and personal development programs. But one of the smartest decisions I've ever made in my life is hiring an executive coach who also is my therapist. Now, I've always been big in personal development. And I was like, I can just read books and all of these things. I don't want to invest in so on and so forth in an individual. But it was one of the best decisions. And as part of that journey with that individual who I still have as part of my kind of extended mentoring group of folks that help me through life, she presented to me the Ikigai. Never heard of it. Never.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was like, what is this? And so she sent it to me. And for those listeners that aren't aware of it, you write down areas in which that you're good at, things that you love to do, what things can make money based on the things that you like to do, and then what does the world need? And that really helped kind of ground me to find, I love coaching, mentoring, and seeing other people grow. I get so much excitement out of that, especially if I can play a role in them progressing themselves in life. And so, again, that point of my life of transitioning out of a CEO, getting back into tech sales and the alcohol and all this other thing was a trigger for me to really sit back and do some really deep discovery. Now, I'm not done. I'm going to continue to dig into myself. I don't think as individuals, we can ever do enough deep discovery on ourselves in our lifetime. But I've made it a mission for myself to continue to grow by learning more about myself. And through that process, working with that executive coach and therapist really got me back on track to now so many things are coming together, and I'm really niching down on why I'm here on this earth.
So powerful. Holy cow, right? And you know what? This exercise, this is something I actually talk about in my book as well, that, we each have this purpose. And sometimes we know what our purpose is. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we know what our purpose is and we kind of go off the road a little bit and get distracted and get things come in our life, right? That probably aren't positive for us and derail us a little bit, right? But we can always get back on that road of purpose. And that ikigai, like you're mentioning, is so powerful because it doesn't ask you what your weaknesses are. It asks you what your strengths are, and gets you to lean into them a little bit, and then forces you to think, okay, these are my strengths. This is what I'm naturally good at. And you can think of those as like your God-given abilities and talents. Now, how can I make money off of this? Because there's nothing wrong with making money, because the more money we make, the broader our mission and purpose can actually go.
Absolutely.
So this is pretty powerful. And my favorite part of the Ikigai model is, what does the world need? Because, when we think of success, it's really easy to think in a silo and think, you know what? I'm going to be successful. I'm going to do these amazing things. But what's even more powerful is when we bring a community with us and actively help shape the world to make it a better place on a collective scale.
Yeah.
That's really powerful, don't you think, Lester?
I couldn't agree with you more. And, you bring up an interesting point. So as I've been going through this deep discovery and uncovering the fact of mentoring coaching, I've set this big, hairy, audacious goal. All right, Tara, which is I want to impact 11 million people's lives. And how am I going to track that? I have no idea. But what I can say, audience, is that if I can have an impact on one of your lives by you listening to today's podcast, and that then in turn, you have an impact on 10 other people, you can see the butterfly effect happening. And so I couldn't agree with you more of, when you're able to find your purpose, right? And then start to build and create a community around it, so much more of an impact and rewarding feeling you're going to get out of that, because more and more people are going to be changed for the better. So I love how you framed that. And I couldn't agree with you more.
I love that. It's so important, right? And it's especially important if we're guided by purpose. So if we're a business owner, let's say, and we're guided by purpose, that we amplify and work with other purpose-driven leaders and businesses. And, you do that enough, like you're talking about, it has that ripple effect. And when enough of us come together on that kind of collective scale, that's when we can really change the world. Mm-hmm. And it starts with a small ripple, and the ripple gets larger and larger and larger until the good guys finally win.
Yeah.
And when you think about it that way, wow, you're not by yourself at that point, because entrepreneurship can be pretty lonely, right?
It absolutely can.
You're on top and it's hard, but you have a community approach. There's nothing you can't do together. And I think individually, we're all pretty good. Together, we could be unstoppable.
Yeah. Well, like they say, right? Strength in numbers.
Yes. I love that. So we know, what you've got going on now. We knew that, it wasn't always this way. There was some, struggles with alcohol. And I think that's not uncommon in sales in general. When I was in sales, so before I started my company, I was in corporate sales. I was a director for sales. And I know the pressures
Mm-hmm.
that come with being in sales, and you go out and hang out with clients, and it's an all-inclusive resort maybe, and you're rubbing shoulders, and then they're taking you out to dinner and you're taking them out to dinner, and all of a sudden it's an open tab, and it's not easy, right? And it's really easy to kind of go down that slippery slope of self-medicating and all of these things, and ultimately sometimes we're escaping.
Yeah.
Is that what it felt like to you? Did it feel like you're running away from something, like you're trying to escape something?
You know what? As you say that, yes, there was definitely a point of me that was trying to escape. And that escape was reality, like my current situation, right? Again, leaving, running a company, and then figuring out, well, what do I do next? Never thought I was going back into, let's say, tech sales. Glad I did, though. I will let all the listeners know that I'm super, super happy at my current employer, and things are just amazing there. But yeah, it was a sense of escape. And then also just numbness, right? Just wanting to numb myself to kind of get myself in a position or in a place where I didn't have to think about anything, right? Not about what I was going to do tomorrow. And it was also suppressing those feelings of anxiousness and worry and things of that nature. And I think oftentimes in sales, and even just in general life, a lot of times we're looking for that escape because we don't want to feel those emotions. And one of the things that I've been doing as part of that deep discovery is feeling all of those emotions, because there's a reason why you're experiencing those. And it's better to feel them and then find ways to not necessarily control them, but to tame them in such a manner that when you experience it again, you know how to get yourself out of that feeling, right? And when you're numbing yourself, you're not allowing your body to excrete those emotions, right? You're pressing them all the way down, and it can get to a point where you can't manage it. I mean, as part of that kind of struggle that I had, I mean, I was in a deep, dark depression where there were days I couldn't even move. Like I would sit in a chair like this. And that was because of the fact that I was suppressing all of these emotions, right? And so now I find ways to let those emotions come out, because I think it's better for you to feel those than to suppress them. In my own personal experiences I've been going through this personal development journey and really digging in deep and feeling everything, which is easier said than done. Because believe me, there are weak moments where I'm like, I really don't want to feel this way, but you have to, right? And when you go through doing difficult things or things that make you feel uncomfortable, that is where the real growth occurs. And you know that better than anyone, right, Tara? Like when you put yourself in those positions where like, well, this is making me extremely uncomfortable. Once you get over that, then you're like, wow, I just grew. And now I'm not that situation or whatever that is. I'm not getting those feelings of being uncomfortable. The last thing that I will say to folks based on this is, really going into, I have developed this mindset of being comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And it is definitely easier said than done. But if you put yourself in these situations that make you feel uncomfortable, and you start to train your brain to be comfortable in them and not allow the situation to take control, my God, you are going to experience tremendous growth in your life in all aspects. So again, folks, try to find a way to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations.
I love that. There's so much wisdom in that, right? When I look back in, my personal development and professional development journey, the best things I ever did was step outside of my comfort zone, right? I used to hate speaking on stage. I used to I couldn't, even just a few years ago, if you would have told me I would have done a TED Talk, I would have thought you were insane. What is that? Like literally, no, not me. What? TEDx talk, right? And I think it's important, and you just make one steady progression. I had no idea that when I first did my first keynote, for example, that I would become a TEDx speaker. And you just make these small, steady progressions, right? And we don't always know the outcome. We don't have to know the outcome.
Yeah.
It's about stepping outside of your comfort zone. And this goes with a lot of areas in life, too. I think when we think of stepping outside of our comfort zone, we think of an activity that we're uncomfortable with, but it could also be dressing nicer.
Yeah.
It could also be presenting ourselves online. It could be posting content, doing podcasts, speaking on stage. I mean, there's so many levels of uncomfortability that I'm excited to explore. And maybe that makes me a little crazy, but I'm excited to explore them because I know growth, exponential growth, is just right around the corner. So I'm always looking for things that make me uncomfortable because I know it's only going to make me better. Don't you think?
No, I mean, you're 100% right. It only makes you better and it strengthens you. And you learn so much by battling through those uncomfortable situations that, again, to your point, leads to exponential growth. So I challenge everyone, find something today that makes you feel extremely uncomfortable and just go do it.
And then thank us afterwards.
Yes, absolutely.
At Lester Sydney. I love that. Well, it's so poignant, right? And again, we all need this information because we don't realize how comfortable we actually are, especially in America.
Yeah.
I read yesterday that the average American, get this, the average American watches 34 hours of TV a week.
I'm not surprised.
I was, because I barely watch TV, and I'm like, people are watching, because you get any excuse under the book, right? So whether you're an entrepreneur starting business, the excuse is I don't have enough time. Whether you're trying to get in shape, the excuse is I don't have enough time.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is, we have all the time. It's not more time. Of course, more time would be fantastic, right?
Of course.
But we can't get more time. But what we can do is capitalize on the time that we do have. And I promise everybody listening to this, you have the time. Don't you think?
Oh my God. It's so funny you brought this up. So I was out to dinner this week in Austin with some of my clients, and we were talking, just catching up on different things, not even talking about business. And something came up with regards to, I forget the specifics, but the individual said, I don't have time for that. And I sat back and I go, wait a second. I was like, you found time to come here to dinner tonight. You found time to do this or that. And it really comes down to, we do have the time. It's, are you committed? Because once you commit yourself, you will find the time to do whatever it is that you want to do. But if you're not committed to it, of course, you're going to come up to your earlier point. Every excuse in the book, oh, I'm an entrepreneur, I don't have time for that. Or, oh, I got to take the kids to practice, I don't have time for that. Whatever it might be. But I can tell, the listeners that you have the time. You just haven't made the commitment yet to yourself or to whatever that activity is that you want to accomplish. Now, when you make that commitment, you will find the time. The time is there. You're just deciding not to do it because you're not committed yet. So
Exactly. And that goes for any goal that we have, whether it's speaking on stage, building a business, starting a podcast, whatever it is, the time is there. And I feel like, going back to your previous point about Ikigai, when we really find and identify our why and our purpose, that sometimes really helps clarify, the things in our life that we are spending time with that aren't serving us. Yeah. To remove those things and to make room for the things that actually will serve us, will serve our purpose, will serve our mission, and, help the world as a result. So I think a really good step based on what our conversation was is get a real clarity on your why and your purpose. Start, really deciding what you want to pursue and then going after it. And you know what? Not letting other things clog up your time and your schedule that aren't working toward that big purpose that we all have, right? Because I know we all have a big purpose. And anybody listening to this show right now, by the way, you have a purpose. Because if you have a heartbeat and you have lungs full of air, I promise you have a purpose in this planet. And wouldn't it be nice if we stopped getting in our own way?
Yeah, I mean, we get in our way far too often. And I had a post about this, a few weeks ago. But you mentioned something, once you get that clarity, right, and you understand your purpose, you almost create a box, right? And I work with my executive coach and therapist on this because so often in my life, I was doing so many different things, right? So I was in sales, I was building a startup nonprofit. Then I decided to do an NFT project. None of these things were aligned.
Yeah.
And it wasn't I wasn't clear yet on what my purpose is, what is my why, And so as I went through that Ikigai, we created this box. And so now, if it doesn't fall into this box of mentoring, coaching, and working with startup CEOs from a sales perspective, I don't do it. And I've had to turn things away. And in the past, I was always hated to turn things away. I always wanted to support, help people. But now I'm getting really good at saying no. And I say, hey, would love to, doesn't fit into my box. This is kind of my focus area. But I do know some other people that this is perfect for. Here's some folks to reach out to. Now, it took me a long time of saying no. But it has helped me out tremendously because, again, at the end of the day, if it doesn't relate to your overall vision or your why or where you want to go out in life, it just becomes a distraction. And I was actually listening to an audiobook recently with Robert Sharman, and he was talking about, you get to this level of success.
Yeah.
And then all these different other opportunities start to come your way. And you're like, well, yeah, maybe I'll dabble in that. And it takes you away from what got you to where you are today. And so he said you need to block out those distractions because they're going to come. People are going to see you're becoming very successful, and they're going to offer you other opportunities. And he's like, if they don't align to what got you to where you're at and what your bigger purpose is, like it's only going to pull you backwards. So, saying no is not a bad thing. It actually is a good thing in my perspective.
I agree. It's kind of a superpower, right? But there first has to be a level of clarity for you to know what to say yes to and what to say no to. But you hit on something that I truly believe in and love. And part of that's the law of attraction, right? And one of the reasons why this is so pertinent to success is that you're right. The more level of success we have, the more opportunities tend to come to us. So we have to have a little bit of wisdom, we have to have clarity, and we have to ultimately be aligned with that purpose. And I think when you put all of these dominoes in place, right, they all kind of feed off of each other. And it's really important to understand that because when you have a mindset of abundance and when you're really getting successful, again, these opportunities are going to start coming at you like nobody's business. And you and I both know that. So we have to be conscious and cognizant to say yes to the right things and no to the things that don't serve us and aren't aligned with that bigger purpose and mission.
Yeah.
I love that. So much wisdom in that.
There's a lot of wisdom in that.
Yes, so much wisdom. But I think anybody who listened to this show today can take away with them a lot of information that they can apply actually right now to start getting that clarity in their lives and businesses, to start aligning with things that do serve them and saying, again, no to the things that don't. So do you recommend a good first step is getting that clarity with something like an Ikigai?
I would say that's definitely the first step. And then I would say secondly is really seriously consider getting an executive coach. And I will say this, some of the best coaches out there, they don't come in with some framework or some, let's say, worksheets. They just ask the right questions. Right? And through their questions, they guide you to obtaining that clarity. But yeah, I would suggest starting first with the Ikigai. Then secondly, consider an executive coach. And then I'd say the third thing would be start to apply the things that you're learning about yourself in the Ikigai to trying to create something for yourself, whether it's being an entrepreneur and starting a new business, whether it's taking on a new career, right? There's a whole bunch of things that you'll uncover about yourself. And then the fourth part is actually taking the steps. So once you find somewhat of that clarity of what is going to drive you, what your purpose and why is, start taking the necessary steps. And you don't have to like climb Mount Everest. It's take one step in that direction, right? And then before you know it, you'll take a second and a third and a fourth. And at the end of the day, everyone's purpose and why will change sometimes depending on where you are in your life. So also be cognizant of the fact of this might be your purpose today, but in 10 years, you'll be in a different part of your life, right? And it might adjust. So maybe you sit down and redo that. So I think we can also, over time, have what I would say like a rebirth, right? Or a transition in our lives where, yes, that was our why, but now it's switched because now I'm in a different part of my life. So I would say those are the 4 things that I would suggest the listeners take on.
I love that. So great. So everyone do a little bit of research into the Ikigai model. I talked about this 2 or 3 episodes ago as well. So this is a reoccurring theme in our show, is again to find that deep level of purpose, because I know that each one of you has a deep purpose and is here for a powerful reason. But the only way we can align with that purpose is by figuring it out and taking some time to get that clarity. And then once we get that initial clarity, game on. Start taking those action steps to put it into reality. So wonderful. Thank you so much for being on the show today, my friend Lester. Any parting words, any last words of wisdom for us today?
I would say the parting words will be, you have what it takes within you to accomplish anything you want to in this world. But the first step to doing that is believing in yourself and your abilities. And that's what I will end, the today's podcast on, because I think too often in life, people don't believe in themselves. And yes, I've been successful in working on other things, but there have been times where I didn't believe in myself. And what I found in that time was I do have everything within me to do what it is that I want to. So being aware, if you're ever having self-doubt or not believing in yourself or imposter syndrome or some of these other things, just know that if you dig deep inside and believe in yourself with positive words of affirmation, let's say, and gratitude, you'll get yourself out of that. So again, I would just end on that, is you have everything inside of you to accomplish anything. Just believe in yourself.
I love that. As I always say, I say this a lot as well, that we all have those tools inside of us. And when we are ready, all of the ability will be furnished to us.
I like that.
Believe me, when I say that, folks, it will be furnished to you. God bless everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and we will catch you on the next episode. Take care. And that's a wrap for this episode of Grasp Confidence. Thank you for joining me today and investing in yourself. Remember, building confidence is an ongoing journey, and each step you take brings you closer to the empowered, fearless version of yourself that you were born to be. Don't forget to visit my website, follow me on social media, and purchase my book, which is available on Amazon. Thank you for listening. We will see you on the next episode. Stay confident.